Hello, it's Scott Newcomb with Zenvi AI. Welcome to the Systems Are Sexy podcast. Today I'm joined by Zach Roesinger here. Roesinger, he's a partner at Resolute RE and co-host of the CRE Pro Show. Zach has built a career at the intersection of traditional relationship-driven brokerage and also modern technology. So kind of balancing the old school deal making. They learned from his father, but also opportunities with data and AI. So, through his work on creative developments from converting banks to QSRs to exploring self storage conversion, his involvement with the prestigious Society of Exchange Counselor, that brings a unique perspective on where commercial real estate is headed. So, welcome, Zach. How we doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. You did a great job in the introduction there. I am Zach Roesinger. Do a lot of build, develop, and then I just love to feed into what's happening in today's world and today's society, including things like data center, AI, just the proliferation of science and technology that's starting to really take off here. So I think you're at the forefront of what we're about to see coming up here in the next year, 5 years, 10 years. It's going to be a world that we don't recognize anymore. And I hope that you and I are at the forefront of that by trying to stay a little bit ahead. And I'm sure your viewers and listeners here are doing the same. So I really commend you on that, being a forward thinker and an early mover. And at some time, we're going to be mainstream and seen as the thought leaders of our time, of our generation, and of our individual fields.
No, I agree with that. It's crazy to think 10 years. I mean, it seems like forever from now. I mean, I feel like we're talking in months and not years right now with all the changes that we're seeing. So kind of give us a background of how you got into commercial real estate and what your experiences have been like.
Sure. I started in commercial real estate 20 years ago. I know it seems like a long time, but in our world, it's sort of truncated into epochs or eras, right? As many people went through the same type of thing during the pandemic, for example, businesses changed and pivoted and accelerated things, large movements in culture, like the internet, for example, making information more readily accessible. If you think about the internet or the internet's application onto the housing market or the housing selling market prior to Zillow, where I was a number one sales guy at one point, long time ago. But prior to Zillow, you had to go to a real estate agent. They had to go look up in their MLS what it was. And then we have the explosion of the internet. So you and I can be on our couch looking at our next house. The same thing is happening to commercial real estate right now. And so we're starting to see this proliferation of technology where typically we're what we call Luddites, right? We're very slow into the adoption of AI technology, new tech, because it's scary for a lot of people when you start to see that there's a new iteration of a new platform that your competitor is using ChatGPT and you're still stuck using the internet, or now they're using Grok or they're using Perplexity, and you're like, oh no, what's this thing that I'm missing out on? Well, the most important part is just to get a high level understanding of where it applies to your business. And so I've tried to do that throughout my career, whether it's staying ahead on having a website initially, or your own email address at the end, so you're not all using Gmail. It makes you look a little bit more professional. But now with the proliferation of AI into our world, into the commercial real estate world, we're starting to see a lot more applications of it, and it can be scary and it can be dangerous. And I'll tell you this personal story here where now we're starting to see a lot more of the older generation, my dad's age, who my dad doesn't have a computer, but he doesn't need one. He says, I have the relationships already built. But Scott, you and I know that having the extra information there so that in real time you can see what your client, who your client is, what they're doing. We use things like Gong, for example, real-time feed of AI into your ear so that you're talking about a building in one ear, and in the other ear, you're hearing, here's what's happening in the neighborhood right now. Here's how you can seem like you're at the forefront of any transaction, or here's what's happening around you. Or so you can really have the internet at your fingertips, or all information at your fingertips. And that's something very different than what we have been used to doing. But at the same time, it's really important for your listeners and viewers and everybody really to take those guardrails and understand that when you upload something, not in a private notebook, when you upload something onto the internet, it's out there. So it's like dumping all of your secrets out there. And in exchange for that, sort of like Facebook, right? You dump all your secrets on, and for that exchange, you get to see other people's secrets unless you have it in that private notebook. So now we start to see a lot more commercial real estate brokers start to like dump all of their contracts and tenants and all the secret things that made our job valuable, that people are dumping it on the internet. And then they're surprised when they do a query and say, oh, like, who are the tenants in this area? And they see their thing there. They see their contract there, and they're like, whoa, where did that come from? And they're, whoever put it on, maybe them or somebody else says, yeah, remember when we uploaded all of those secret documents so that they could just give us a summary of them? Well, that's out there now. So it's really important to understand what you're doing at this point and not just put it all out there unless you want it to be out there. So I think it's a really good idea to partner with, and I recommend everybody does, somebody that has an insight into AI and is at the forefront of it. If you're in commercial real estate, we really haven't had to do that. We've been really a paper and pen and handshake business. But to bring in somebody that has AI experience, I just had this conversation this weekend. Someone said, what do I need to do to be at AI? What do I need to how do I AI my business? And I'm like, that is a really big question, because do you need to do it? And if you do, what are you trying to do? What is your goal? So I know that you're sharing the resources internally here. Doing interviews like this is really helpful, I think, for a lot of people to say, oh, that application actually, is relevant to me, because I just put a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. I didn't upload my finances into ChatGPT free or something. And then they go, no, I shouldn't have done that. Like, trying to make sure that those guardrails are in place by talking to somebody that has intimate knowledge of AI is super helpful in the commercial real estate world.
Yeah, I think the question you got over the weekend is probably something that's getting asked a lot, and I know I hear it too. I know I should be doing it, but I don't know where to start because it's very overwhelming. There's so many tools out there. So I agree, and you don't
What
have to
would you?
start.
Let me ask you, Scott, in your experience, and you're at the forefront of this. If somebody came to you today, commercial real estate broker, said, "Hey, Scott, I saw your interview with Zach. Great stuff. That guy's a weirdo, but but I'm talking about me, not about you. That guy's a weirdo, but I agree. I need to figure out how to get AI into my business, or I think I do. I don't know. What's the first step for somebody to do that, to understand what they're sort of plan that out, or understand what they're asking when they say, I need AI in my business?
Yeah, I think it's just determining what your pain points are, your bottlenecks, and what you're doing. We just had a podcast earlier today with a realtor. Actually owns his own brokerage, and he was just talking about, if I have to do it more than a couple of times in a month, I need to automate it. So he's completely automated all parts of his business. So you really have to take a step back and go, all right, it's one thing to be doing chat GPT, but that's just a tip of the iceberg. There's so many different tools. So whether it's lead generation, marketing, social media, RM, market data research, just there's so many applications. You really have to customize it to what your needs are, because trying to just buy one tool for everything doesn't work. So what we do is we really focus on, hey, I got to get more leads, or I need more outreach to investors, maybe something a commercial realtor needs. That's something that we offer too. But you really got to understand what you need, and then just drill down from there, and start small and then grow big as you start to feel comfortable with it.
Here's an idea for your listeners, and here's what would help us in commercial real estate. So I use, let me just preface this with, like, I think I'm a little bit more forward or ahead of most of my peers in terms of AI. In fact, sometimes my colleagues are like, hey, stop using AI. It's the end of the day. Like, stop doing that, because it's getting annoying of you coming back and responding back with the answer right away. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't really, I didn't figure out all the answers. I just ran it through something that we should be all using. Here's the question for you, Scott. So I attend a lot of these meetups. I run a meetup myself here for commercial real estate, and I try to bring AI into it. So I've been going to these meetups for AI here in Austin, Texas, and we went through N8N the other day. I think this would be a great idea for your listeners, if for whatever field that they are applying their AI knowledge to. If you can use a map of what those block, I'm going to misuse the terms, but the blocks that you change around in N8N to say, like, here's the workflow. And just like your realtor earlier said, like, if I have to automate it, I know these things. Like, I have a spreadsheet, I have email, and I have Slack, and I want it to do these things. If your listeners that are maybe consultants for this, or could be consultants for this, could say, hey, let's just sit down on a shared screen and you tell me, like, where's the bottleneck, and if you tell me that where's your process, you have a spreadsheet, you would like those things in the spreadsheet to go into Gmail, and then Gmail to blast them out, and when the responses come back, you get a Slack response. If you show them visually, don't show them the backside. The back end gets really confusing when you start dropping it into, and the code is going down the side, and you're like, this, it just scares people. So if you can make it real easy, of course you're going to do that. Like, after you leave the call, you're going to say, okay, like, how do I build this workflow? And then you go back to them and say, hey, that spreadsheet we had, here, watch this in real time, how this happens. Gmail, or spreadsheet, Gmail, Slack message. And they're going to be like, wow, they don't need to know like what the back end is. In fact, if they did, it would just be more confusing, but just show them like, here's the end result. And Scott, you did a great job there saying, and was my exact same response this weekend, which is, what is the goal? What is the bottleneck, and what is the goal? And and I said, your goal is not to, unless you want to learn AI. What your goal is to solve the problem of your clients in this list don't know what is available in Flex Industrial Warehouse in their zip code. And if you could, and then they're telling you their problem. That's where the problem is. They don't have enough time in order to send out that to every single person. If you could automate that, would it be great? Yes, it'd be fantastic. Cool. I can do that. $100 done by Monday. Boom. That's like, there's a business coming right there. And once they see you do it once, they're going to say, oh, I have all these other problems. Like, let me tell you about all of the other things, or let's apply that to warehouses. Let's apply that to land. Let's apply that to not just my city, but I have agents in another city. And can we do it there too? Yeah, of course. So that's sort of the question is they don't really know what is available, right? They say, well, we need data, but we don't know where the data exists. Now there's, you got to find that data for sure, but your listeners are smart enough and advanced enough to say like, oh yeah, there's a ton of data sets out there. We can just pull into a spreadsheet and just email them. And if they want, sort of permission marketing, if they want to engage with us, they now have the information there. If they don't, it's not the right time. Great. We'll just continue to send them a newsletter every month or something. And it'll cultivate that. And the entry point to that is $500. That means relatively nothing, to us, similar to what your realtor was talking about earlier. The amount that we should be spending on technology and AI application should be way higher. We just don't know where to spend it. So if somebody could tell us it's $500 and I'll solve this bottleneck, that's an easy check to write for us, even if it's speculative. Like, I don't know if this will work. If I could try to learn $500, if it would, for sure. And once you prove that point once, you're just going to see it take off like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I agree. It's just sitting down with the client. We'll do it for a 30-minute call. Let's just take a deep dive into your business. Let's figure out what the pain points are, because you may not even know where they are until we actually have that conversation. And then to your point with the dollars, it's just showing the ROI. Hey, it's going to be $3,000 a month. They're like, well, that's a lot, but here's what you're solving with that problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a repeatable process, right? Across scalable, repeatable process. The R&D always costs the most amount of money. I was telling you earlier, Scott, that I just came back from my first ever rocket launch down in South Padre Island. I'm wearing my Firefly Rockets shirt here, but we went down to SpaceX. And to see the advancements that are happening in space development, and just the growth around the spaceports is amazing. It includes data centers, very similar to what you're seeing happen across here in Texas. Is money is flooding into these data centers, but who is using the data, right? Is it Facebook, Google, or in this case, is it Blue Origin and SpaceX launching these rockets? And it's very cool to see that this growth is happening. Now, there is very little information down in Brownsville, for example. Like maybe some of the listeners here are saying, well, how do I get in front of this? How do I use AI to get in front of what's coming? What may that be, data centers, or in this case, space? Well, you have a ripe market down there for landowners, flex industrial buildings, sellers to buy it for your client at a discount, because right now it's just being used to store widgets coming across the border. But companies like Firefly, they need to store rockets. They need to store pieces. And so now you have this arbitrage in information between the people that are the commercial real estate brokers, for example, that are down in Brownsville, and where I want to be. And I can apply my knowledge, my money, my mindset to that location. So it's finding out where that arbitrage is, and really AI can be used to do that en masse and quickly across multiple markets.
Yeah, you have brought up about the data centers. What opportunities or challenges are you seeing for CRE brokers right now?
So I get a lot of calls on this. Here in Central Texas, we've had a flood into the market for AI and data center development. And what we're seeing right now is the crux point between I have land and I have data center land. We are marketers at our core, right? That's like what we get paid. Half of what we get paid for. Half is relationship and getting the client across the line to buy or sell their property. The first one is just generating that interest. Do you have something that's marketable? And if so, at what value? And so I get a lot of inbound. People see me on shows, they see me on the CRE Pro Show, and they're saying, "Oh, you talked about how there's a large data center that's happening in, for example, Rockdale. Rockdale is where the old Alcoa plant is. We had a company called SLR that bought 33,000 acres to just specifically around data. And so people see that I have listings in that area and they say, I also have land there, or my uncle has 100 acres of data center land. And I say, well, what makes you think data center land? And so I look at the land. We have a bunch of software that we use to look at it, and we need a few things right now. So that's water. Water is very important here in Texas for cooling. It is maybe natural gas, so people to work there, and then access to the high voltage power lines or those lattice lines. So admittedly, I can admit to everybody here, I was wrong in the past. Every time I went to someone's land and I said, hey, you have garbage land because you have a giant power line and nobody wants to live underneath those. I had to call all those people back this year and be like, hey, I was really wrong. I'm so sorry. By the way, I can sell your property to data center building and providers, and they're trying to shovel this market or this money into the market right now, saying we will pay 5 times what it's worth just to put the data center there. Now, this is the question as we're seeing down right now in Abilene, which is where I believe, or San Angelo, up in the north here, they're building the giant center with Oracle and OpenAI and the U.S. government. What we're seeing is a closed loop system. So what I think might start to happen in the data center sites selection is the water will be less important. It's been the most important now, but will it be the most important in the future? I don't know. And will we all look back and say, like, will it be like building a shopping mall in the middle of nowhere? Because I just talked to a guy yesterday that built a 700-acre data center on 1,500 acres. Will that be crazy in the future? We're going to look out there. It's going to be this old dilapidated building way far away from people, but it had water. And they're like, yeah, but you just closed loop system. And my Google scientist friends are like, yeah, but we just do this in the basement of a building. It's like looking at a computer from the 70s and they were in a huge building with all these fans. And now it's like in your pocket. So where do we see that take off or move in the same direction? It's hard to say. But for right now, they're buying land en masse. And I'm getting calls every day of people saying, hey, I either have land or I have New York or LA money that's trying to come out, or the Bay, trying to come out. Give me anything. Give me anything that fits these criteria. And typically it's above 50 acres. It's below 500 acres. And it has access to those power lines up to 745 kilovolt lines. So between 175 kilovolts and 750 kilovolts. That's what kind of thing you need on your property in order to have a property to do that. But look, this is a great, maybe a quest for some of your AI super ninjas out there. If you can readily identify land, I'm paying people to do this right now. I have 25 guys. We call them bird dogs. We send out the bird dogs all across driving. This is very archaic, I know, across Texas, and they just roll up on a ranch and they say, hey, this fits the criteria. Would you be interested in potentially selling it? Because they need to run a power load study, which takes some time. So they need to commit to it in the fact that they're going to run it through. They're going to spend $10,000 to $20,000 running it through, just like the criteria that these data centers need. Once it passes that, they're going to pay X what the land is worth. And if it's farmland that you have cows on right now you have generational wealth for your family just by being in the right place and by using somebody like AI Insider, like you have right here, to say, hey, this fits criteria. Zach, here's the phone number, or Zach, here's the email, or Zach, here's the name of the person who owns that. That is hugely important. Finding that thing is the hardest part. And it's something I pay a lot of money to these bird dogs just to go figure out who owns the land that fits that criteria I talked about earlier.
Yeah, market data research there. So you had mentioned technology and AI. What part of that is in your business? Are you using AI in your day-to-day activities?
So a really interesting point. I get probably 5 to 7 inbound requests daily for, hey, I have the greatest AI tool. It's super good. It's going to produce you a whole lot of leads. Leads is not our issue. We have lists of leads. That's not the issue. The issue is to try to filter down those leads to the right buying position, right? We don't need to be talking to somebody that is holding their land and plans on holding it farm it for their cows for the next 20 years. That's not important. What's important is to cultivate that lead up to, yes, I would be interested in talking to a person. Then it's on us to form that relationship. I said this to my dad a long time ago. I brought him to work one time at Zillow, and he goes, "How many phone calls do you make?" And I said, "You have to make 250 phone calls a day, or you get cut out of the loop. You don't get any more inbounds." He goes, 250 phone calls? I make four, and I make 10 times the amount of money you do. But those four phone calls are very important. So he has cultivated those relationships. If we could use AI to get to that same point, we wouldn't need 250 phone calls of people saying no, no, no. You're getting to the maybe, could consider it, yes, right? So that's the whole, and ultimately, I said, what's going to prevent technology at the time? There was no AI, but or at least we weren't using it. What's going to prevent technology from completely eradicating your business, Dad, as a commercial real estate broker? Why wouldn't people just go on the internet and they would find out what a building costs and make an offer directly to the owner? And he said, when somebody's making a 10 million, $20 million purchase, they're not going to do that through the internet. Unless you're Mark Cuban buying a plane off of eBay. I mean, great. I love the guy, but like that was a little bit insane. He said, owners will gladly pay 5% to have you work on their behalf to make sure that, and we carry insurance to make sure that if things go wrong and we did something wrong, we're held liable for it. So it's a good thing to have somebody carry you through. But as we're just seeing, it's sort of like Zillow again. If you aren't finding that your real estate agent is finding the property for you, and you're on your couch and you're like, holy moly, this is the right one for us, let's still reach out to that real estate agent and say, hey, we need help to negotiate a better price on this or better terms or whatever. That's what they should be good at. That's what they're getting paid for. But in our terms, there's a lot of things like environmental issues that we see people try to go direct. Like they drive by a property, they go direct, and then they years later realize it's in a FEMA flood zone. And they're like, what does that mean? You're like, well, you can't build in a FEMA flood zone. You just bought property that's technically underwater. And they're like, oh, this is bad. So having that safeguard in there is good, but you can use it to identify those properties, to get in front of those properties, and to offer those as not just I can provide you with a lot of leads, I can provide you with qualified leads. Here's a good example of what I can do. And if I saw that come in an example of someone said, hey, I saw you sold a building in Austin, Texas. Here's the almost exact building over here. I have a whole list of buyers that did not buy that building, right? Only one could buy it. So I have a whole list of people that are saying, I need this exact building and I don't care if it's down the street. Well, if you provided me with that specific example of that, that is gold. That is what I'm willing to pay, because if you calculate 3% or 6% of a $7 million transaction, that's what kind of commissions are coming in. So when you do that, I have to spend that money or I will be taxed on it. I have to spend that. I would love to spend that on somebody who knows AI and can use AI to deliver exactly my client profile. And I can tell you that profile as any commercial real estate broker, developer, investor should be able to. Here is exactly what I'm looking for. If you can find it, I can buy it and I will pay you for it.
I do want to plug your podcast. Can you tell us about the CRE Pro Show?
Yeah, so I have a partner named Dan Lukowitz, really great dude. It's his birthday today. So if this airs today or in the future, if you look up Dan Lukowitz, we have a course called the CRE Pro course, and it helps brokers, investors, and developers learn how to go from no listings to closing their first listing in the first 90 days, which is really hard. Most people struggle to get into our business in the brokerage side because it takes between 12 and 18 months to get your first commission closing. So unless you can go a year without any money, it's really hard to get into the industry. We try to do it in the first 90 days. And we have ways to do that. You can learn from, and just as I was recommending with the AI earlier, learn from and leverage your network and what they have already learned, what their specific skill sets are. That's exactly what this does. And through that, we've been able to develop a show on, we are right now on Apple TV. We have Chrome, we're on Roku. So you can find us there, or the CRE Pro Show. We go through and do something very similar to you, Scott. We interview a really nice, attractive, very, very smart guys and ladies that are leaders in their industry. Through that, it's just the growth of information, the proliferation and the dissemination of information across a large network of people say, yeah, this is for me. And through that, we found that building this network of people that are trying to do the same thing, that are forward thinking leaders, there is a synergy that happens there. And many of the CRE pros get together, they do deals together, they have different components. One has land, one knows how to build RV parks. They get together, they say, I'll contribute the land, I'll contribute my knowledge of RV parks. They build an RV park together and they're in business. And it's amazing to see what happens inside of your network, inside of what you're doing here, Scott, in order to bring people together. And I really suggest reaching out to people with specific requests and needs through LinkedIn or email or through you, Scott, and reach out directly to you and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to get AI application into my business, Scott. How do I do that? And so a really great opportunity to do that here in AI at the forefront of what we're doing.
So if people want to learn more about whether that's the podcast or your business, real estate business, what's the best way to find out?
Well, I'm the most researched or most searched guy with my last name, so you can enter me into Google or ChatGPT. I never really know what ChatGPT, how much it's stoking my own ego. I think we have all at one time Googled ourselves. Admitted, at 3 a.m, you're like, I don't think anybody will see this. You entered your name into Google. You're like, what comes up? Well, try doing that now into ChatGPT, especially if you're paying for the subscription, because it's like your number one ego stoker. It's like, oh, you're the best. You're the best out there, and you know all the answers. And you're like, I don't think that this is right, but I really appreciate you, GPT. Yeah, if you reach out, I'm happy to answer any and all questions. Happy to help connect you with your next deal. And here in Austin, Texas, and Central Texas, all the way down to the border, I have properties for sale. I have buyers that are looking to buy, and I have developers that will work with you if you just have the land and you'd like to learn how to develop that land. You bring the land, they bring the development. It's a great opportunity, and it creates some new business, which you can then spend and hire more AI consultants through Scott, for sure.
That's awesome, Zach. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. This is very insightful.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, Scott. You're the man.
Thank you.